handle as well. And I also wanted to open up that, you know, this is the second time we've been in this fantastic new facility. It's great that we're having our meetings here. I'm glad everyone's here to experience it. Things are always challenging and difficult here, and we're gonna we've shifted our agenda a bit today. We're gonna get an update from a couple of critical situations that the whole team at ACC has been handling with incredible professionalism, but with great strain and stress over the last few days. So we're gonna start with that kind of an update. But I also feel like we should start with a little bit of a happy note too. This is our 30th year in operation, and we celebrated our 30th anniversary at our gala recently, which was, of all the galas we've had, the most successful one we've ever had, raising more than $750,000. So it was a fantastic event. Those of you who were there, thank you so much for coming, and thank you everyone who supports the organization with donations, with volunteer work, and advocacy. So, welcome everyone, great to see everyone. The first thing we need to do is to approve our meeting minutes from our April 3rd meeting, which was a short meeting where we reviewed our audit. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes, please? A second? All in favor? The minutes are approved. And I think we'll move right over to you, Lisa, right? Okay.
Thank you everyone for coming. I just want to say a few words before we get started. This is our 6-month operational review. We do a calendar year review of our operations. That's how data is collected nationally, so that's when we compare ourselves to what's going on in the nation. But this is the end of our fiscal year, and actually today is the start of our new fiscal year, fiscal 26, which is July 1, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. So you'll see at the end of the operational presentation, we'll do our budget for how we did in fiscal 25 and what the budget is for fiscal 26. As Patrick said, we just had a celebration of our 30th year. It was really a great event. A lot of goodwill, a lot of good stories to tell. We recognized 3 of our own staff who really have done above and beyond, and it's an award that's voted on among the staff. So it's, you know, your peers are selecting you. One of whom is going to help present today about the reporting cases that we're going to talk about in a moment. And so we always talk about how busy and the population, and you're going to hear all that again because it's this, you know, this is what we do. We're still taking in the increasing number of animals. But I did want to say that in the last 6 years operationally, there have been a lot of highs and there have been a lot of lows. I mean, you combine it and you just sort of push forward to like make every day a little bit better for the animals in our care and for the people in the community. And over the years, our organization has really become a social services organization. It is not just about animals come in and we care for the animals and let's get them all out. There is so much in terms of social services that we are providing now, and it has really changed not only our operational and strategic outlook, it's also changed the way we approach development and fundraising, because we are part of a community that's not just about animals, it's really about the people connected to those animals. How can we help those people? I think by trying to do more work in the community, we're going to help solve what's happening inside the shelter with so many animals. So, so we had a lot of good stuff, and you're going to hear about it, but I think it's really, really important to just take a moment and start with something that wasn't great. The effort, the extraordinary effort and teamwork and collaboration and just compassion and empathy from our team in these last 2 months, in May and June, have been incredible. I can't even really put words to it. You're gonna see only a few slides because there are a lot of photos that are just, one picture tells you enough. But that's part of what we're dealing with. There are issues outside of our control that ACC gets called on a moment's notice to arrive and help. And so the situations that I'm talking about are two extraordinary hoarding cases. One in an apartment and one in a private home. So it's anywhere. And what we are starting to think about, we're gonna have a debrief about both pieces, is how much more is out there. These aren't one in May, one in June. It's over 150 animals in just 6 weeks that we had to jump in and come up with a strategy for. So I want to introduce Ellen Curtis, who is our Vice President of Programs and lots of other things. I mean, everybody wears so many hats that titles are almost insignificant at this point. And she is going to explain the situation, and then she's going to bring up two of our very key staff who played a vital role in this rescue mission.
Hello. So as Teresa said, we had a couple of unique situations recently, and we've dealt with situations before. I think in past meetings you've heard us talk about different chicken cases we've had, where we took in over 800 chickens in the course of a few weeks. We've dealt with cat hoarding cases in the past, but this was unique in that it was 2 cases, they were 7 weeks apart, and it was the first time we had really been involved directly in this type of a rescue effort. And they were similar in that they were dog hoarding cases, but there's also like so many unique situations to each case that you're going to hear about. I do want to say that the amazing thing, having been on site as each day unfolded, there was no questioning by the staff. So, yes, we take care of animals every day. Yes, we're used to having this overpopulation we've been dealing with for years. But to get a phone call that there's a situation where there is a large number of dogs in one case an apartment, in another case a house, not knowing what the situation in those spaces is, dealing with heat, dealing with neighbors, dealing with everything. They're just, I can't even explain it to you, to be here and to see the staff instantly say, what do we need to do to help these animals? That was the only thing they cared about. They did not care about themselves. They did not care about their schedules. They just got up and started saying, what do we need to do to get those animals to a safe place? And so, also, I want to emphasize, don't be fooled and start to think this was anything easy by the fact that we were in and out in both situations in 2 days and the animals were all placed within days. There was nothing easy about it. This was a culmination of years and years of building partnerships with our New Hope partners, having our staff prepared for anything and everything. So it really was it was a huge lift. So I want to call up Tara Makara, who is our Director of Shelter Operations and Behavior, and Dr. Brianna Tunini, who is our Director of Shelter Medicine. They were both on site, and we're just going to kind of talk through how the day went. We're going to talk about them as 2 separate. Okay. So we're going to start with the 48 large breed dogs that were living in Queen's apartment. And so you two who are on the site and involved from the very beginning planning, start off by telling us what was done before heading to the site. What were your thoughts? What were you starting to coordinate staff-wise and supply-wise?
So we were having a normal Thursday. The ASPCA reached out to us. There was an eviction case going on. The original number you're going to see in both cases was 20. So we were preparing for 20 dogs. So on site, I had reached out to my canine behavior team, who was on site that day, and I pulled a couple of key players from that team for handling, knowing that we were going into a situation with larger dogs, and we grabbed equipment. So we were grabbing our safety equipment, leashes, treats, a lot of treats. We used a lot of treats for these dogs. So any extra supplies that we might want on hand, and then PP, a lot of PP. Yeah, our Tyvek suits, our gloves, and we were up and out in 30 minutes.
From the medical side of things, I was preparing what kinds of medications might be helpful on sites to manage these large, potentially aggressive dogs. Super under-socialized dogs as well, so I was thinking, okay, maybe we need some oral medications to help chill them out, to make things a little bit more easy, to reduce their stress and anxiety. I was also needing just other supplies and treats. I added more treats to that mix so that we can, try to entice them and encourage them to come out.
Spam,
Vienna sausages work really well. Cheese wrapped up with, cat food also works really well. But really just trying to think medically what would be useful. And the main role sort of for the medical side of things on site is to really triage animals, to see which animals need care immediately and urgently, which animals can come back to the shelter and be seen as an intake exam sort of right away, or do they need to go to an off-site emergency hospital for care. So that's typically what my role is on site. And I did have another team member from another organization, the ACC was also there. They gave me one of their licensed vet technicians, which was very helpful because they're like ninjas in everything that they do. So that was very helpful to have extra people on hand.
So talk to us about what both the outside and environmental factors were, and then the condition of the apartment.
Yeah, so for the Shepherd case, it was a 7th floor apartment, and one elevator, very, very small elevator. And we were dealing with large dogs, so we had to bring crates upstairs. And that alone was a feat. Between the ASPCA, we kind of made just a conveyor belt of crates going up, staff going up and down the stairs. We wore that apartment specifically. There was no air circulation. It was hot. It wasn't as hot, luckily, as last month, but it was hot. And we were also dealing with tenants, people just on their normal day-to-day. So having to share the elevator all day, trying to get in and out, and obviously that slowing down operation on our end. The super was really helpful for us, getting access to the apartment on the second day, but the apartment alone, the way it was situated, you just have one long corridor, and the dogs were loose in the apartment, and the way that the door opened just really was a challenge in its own to actually access the dogs. So we did get lucky. There was a empty apartment that we used on that floor. There were several on that floor, and we understand why someone want to live on that floor. But we did have tenants that lived on that floor that were coming in and out. Most of them left their apartment for the day while we were there, and then they came back hours later, and they were like, "You guys are still here?" I'm like, "Yep, we're going to be here well into the evening." But we used that empty apartment to stage our empty crates, and then as we were grabbing dogs, we were bringing them over, so then Tamini and LBT can actually look at those dogs, medically assess them, and then get them downstairs and load it up into vehicles. And we can only do 2 at a time. So
yeah, it was a small elevator, there's not a lot of space. The hallway was also very narrow, so we were shuttling crates and carriers, sliding them on the ground, bringing one that had just had a dog placed inside of it from the apartment, sliding that one sort of towards me, and then having another one go that way. So it became very efficient once we started actually pulling dogs out. But that additional space of that open apartment was quite luxurious in a way, because there was there was breeze, there were many cockroaches on the floor, but it was still like so nice, I think, compared to the other space. Just in general, hoarding situations, and Tara and I think have both been to quite a few in our lives. They are really difficult to be around. The smell is usually the first thing that hits you. The amount of ammonia that is in the air, on the ground, it is a very dangerous substance to humans. And I think with repeated continuous exposure, you also sort of get used to it. So for someone initially walking in, it's quite bad, but I think it also tells quite a lot about sort of the human aspect of people living in these conditions. That's why social services are so necessary to get involved with these boarding situations, because it's not just about the animals, it's about the human-animal bond and that relationship and how the animals are struggling, but also the humans that have been going through that because they are experiencing boarding. It's not someone who's just crazy or, you know, we need to just disregard off the face of the earth. It's someone that actually needs help because there is a mental health. It is now recognized as a disorder in the DSM-5 as an OCD behavior. So that is something that we need to really recognize, I think, as a community and say there are people out there that are struggling with this, and we as an agency, as an animal welfare agency, as you were saying, we are now sort of encroaching and doing more work with social services to try to prevent these situations that impact both humans and animals.
So how long did it take?
First day, we were there well over 12 hours. You'll see a common theme, so with the apartment specifically, we had to make sure that we bolted the door back closed. The tenant that was removed from that apartment, there was concern that he was going to come back. So NYPD worked with us as well as the landlord to make sure that we can get access the next day. So over 2 days, well over 12 to 15 hours until we could pull the last dog, and then coming back to shelter, and then obviously processing them while they were here. For the medical end of it, behaviorally these dogs were extremely shut down, highly under-socialized. Normal things like walking through a doorway was like a big celebration. It was extremely difficult for these dogs. You know, not being on leash, we're talking about adult dogs, large dogs, that have never had a leash on them, let alone like harnesses, but it was really amazing to watch them as they got used to us and they would start opening up a little bit, and they were very clingy with people, and that was a great thing to see, but you can imagine that behavior in the home was elevated so much higher because of the fact that they're never used to people being in their apartment, in their space, and that's the only space that they knew. It's a 2-bedroom apartment, and that was it. So having to deal with people coming in, having to deal with going into a crate, it's a very high-stress situation for them. They have no idea what's going on, and it was a range of ages. So you had from young puppies to adult dogs that were well into 5-6 years old, and probably more. So we had to go at their pace. It took us a while to get access into the apartment because of how many there were, and getting the door physically open. Safety for us as well. Yes, we want to remove the animals as quickly as possible, but we want to do this safely. I will very proudly say no injuries on site, and that's a huge feat, especially when we're dealing with dogs that we're talking about 40, 50, 60 pounds. And that was because we took our time. So that's why we did a lot of treats. Most of our content that we have from that apartment specifically, you see us giving them meatballs and trying to get them just a little bit warmed up with us, and then we can slowly separate one from the group. And we went one at a time. We separated one dog, got that dog into the crate, next one in. So it was a slow process, but the reason why it was successful is because we took our time with that.
And then on the shelter side, there was a lot of prep happening, you know, to get ready for this. So we had our admissions team was making all the records. Our placement and New Hope team was starting to make phone calls and starting to connect with partners. And that's where I think, you know, our long-standing relationships really came in. Hearing, like I was only listening to Jessica and her team make phone calls, and like you hear like a deep sigh on the other end of the phone from the partner you're calling, but you know, they're gonna help, they're gonna do what they can. And then of course, they were just getting everything ready here, getting crates, getting ready to do vaccinations and intake exams. So it was a lot, like, well-oiled machine of like the whole thing coming together.
Our teams stayed way past the time that they should have left, I think. People were here until 10, 11, I saw, I think maybe 12, but I don't think that's an exaggeration at all. But from the medical side of things, as soon as animals come in, we need to vaccinate them. It's a way that we prevent disease transmission in the shelter. It can take 24 hours for that vaccine to provide sufficient immunity against other viruses and diseases that, you know, housing animals in a shelter can give. So an intake exam includes just a whole evaluation of the dog, and most of these dogs were in relatively decent body condition in terms of, you know, they weren't emaciated, they weren't super chunky, but they were in good body condition. We did see some bites, some wounds on their bodies. We also did see some dermatitis on their paw pads, but nothing really significant, which was quite impressive. I was actually expecting quite a lot of other issues. These dogs were in pretty good medical condition.
And you can see in the photos just the condition of the apartment, which was not, I think, too different than you would expect to have a two-bedroom apartment with that many large dogs living in it. There was another photo that isn't included here that you may have seen where when they first opened the door and you just see like all these faces looking at you, like, and you just realize like how narrow that hallway is and the entrance into the apartment. And being like a new person trying to get in there with these dogs, you know, one person. And the owner at one point was saying, I should make a voice recording in, I can't remember what language he spoke, because that may make it easier, because that's what they know. So that was like a very, very
Sure, so we when we had arrived, the dogs had already been agitated about 2-3 times of people trying to get access to the door. NYPD shows up, so the way eviction works is they have to make sure that the apartment is clear, so it is safe for people to enter. Due to the amount of dogs, they obviously couldn't do that. They were able to open the door, they realized what was on the other side of the door, and they quickly closed it. So they walked out of the building, and they said, we'll be back, and that specific set of officers never came back. So we were tasked with trying to figure out a way of making point of entry. We ended up reaching out to ESU, which is the Emergency Services Unit from NYPD. And they had come in, and what we ended up doing was we chopped the door from about the peephole up. So we made a Dutch door, basically, a farm door. And we were able to open up the top piece of it so we can actually see. That's how we got that photo of the rows of dogs and eyes just looking at us. And trying to get an idea. We had a couple of immediate, which we were expecting, behaviorally much more forward and defensive, aggressive dogs that were very much protecting their space. And he had told us that no one can walk into his apartment, only him. So we were prepared for that. So with ESU's help, we were able to target those dogs specifically and get them out of the way as quickly as possible. And then we can start working with the other dogs. So we had removed with ESU, they removed about 2-3 of the very large males. And then they just started grabbing the puppies. They grabbed the cute ones, and they like turned around. They looked at me, and they had 2 like chunky puppies with them, and he was like,
just hold it.
yeah, and he was like, all right, the rest are all for you guys. So that's when we knew, okay, they tapped down, and we switched over with them. So we were quite surprised. That second day when we went back, there was what we had 4 dogs left. We were dealing with running out of light because there was no electricity. So we had decided the dogs were in decent shape. We wanted to leave them there, not stress them out overnight, and trying to get these dogs in a dark apartment, also for safety for staff. When we went back the next day, we were expecting 4. And while we were working with those 4, a 5th female adult just came out of the room, and we were like, wait a minute, what are you doing? And she had a whole litter she was taking care of the whole time we were in there. We had no idea. So we ended up bringing 10 dogs that day in total that we were not expecting. So operationally, Ellen had mentioned, I oversee shelter ops, so I was in contact with my team here, and we had to call them and be like, hey, we need more spots. So it is quite a puzzle to figure out on our end. And that first day very much was moving dogs in order to make space for these dogs coming in. And medical is a huge help on this end on the housing end. But we had dogs in places that we normally would not have here. And that was definitely the first time for us here physically in this building of figuring out housing, appropriate housing, and then how can we rotate those dogs out as quickly as possible.
The goal is to find a place that is suitable, not for days and days. This is just a temporary, let's get them out of that space, meet their medical and behavioral needs as much as we can, and then get them to where they really need to go as quickly as we can. There were, of the 48 dogs, there were 8 dogs that we did proceed with euthanasia on. These were decisions that were made both in the field and on site between multiple departments after a lot of discussion about can we meet their behavioral needs in our shelter, and what do we think the prognosis is if they do go to a rehabilitation space. Knowing what we know, there is a growing body of research and evidence looking at rehab in severely under-socialized dogs. Only very few places actually do that, but that requires months and months and months of extremely intensive care. And even that, the prognosis is still poor. So we did look at what we can provide, how these dogs, like as much as we wanted to get these dogs out of the shelter as quickly as possible, seeing dogs in kennels that are really struggling behaviorally is something that we do not feel comfortable with, and euthanasia was the best option for these guys. So we did have multiple discussions. We went through each animal individually, and we looked at the whole sort of animal that's standing in front of us. So there were 8 that we did proceed with.
Any last thoughts on this case before we move on to the next one that came 7 weeks later?
This was a hard case because these were big dogs.
Yeah.
The next case is quite different.
So,
I'm curious where the other dogs went.
The 40 dogs?
Yeah.
They're replaced with different rescues. Yeah.
some went to the ASPCA, that, like, from the apartment, and the majority came to us, and then they were replaced. Okay, so 7 weeks later, just last Thursday, which doesn't really seem.
Also Thursday.
Also Thursday, also we're in like a meeting here, and this time, we got the call directly from NYPD that there was a person who had passed away in their home and that there were a number of dogs. And the number started at 15 to 20, then they said perhaps 50. In the end, it ended up being 111 total. And so, you want to show the video first?
Sure. We can get an idea. This was the ground level. That is our amazing, one of our amazing field staff. And we had to climb over the obstacle course of items to get to dogs.
So this person was also experiencing object hoarding,
Yeah.
in addition to animal hoarding. And typically when those do coincide, the conditions are pretty poor.
Yeah. Yeah, so Ellen had mentioned NYPD had reached out to us. The original number was 15 to 20. FDNY was there that morning to assess a woman that unfortunately had passed away. The number that they had given was 15. So we were crossing our fingers that we were walking to 15 to 20. When our field staff had arrived, we were here. I had asked for someone to actually go and get eyes because they gave us small to medium, and with our experience with emergency responders, that can mean a lot of things. So I asked for one of our field staff to go out and actually get eyes there and give us an idea. When he arrived, he called and he said, "I need hands and this is really bad." And I said, "Okay." And same situation as the shepherds, reaching out to my canine behavior team, medical getting all set up, collecting our supplies, and heading out. And when we arrived, that 15 to 20 was quickly taken in, and we loaded those up, and they just kind of kept coming. And in this situation, we had dogs that were like a minute old, because they actively went into labor as we were moving them, to very well into their teens. So you had a whole range of different obstacles that you would walk into regarding on the medical end. And this is the day after our 3-day heat wave on top of that.
And again, no electricity.
No electricity. toxicity, no water.
The medical conditions of these dogs was much more severe.
Yes.
Many dogs were severely matted. Maybe you've seen photos, I believe that
Yeah,
there's a
there's
photo
one
up
there.
there, yep. Severely matted, unable to ambulate, walk, severe ocular changes. This could have been a result of upper respiratory infections, but it can also be because, you know, this type of breed mix may have a dry eye, keratoconjunctivitis sicca, and that causes ulcerations and quite a lot of discharge in the eyes. We saw a lot of skin infections. We saw some with quite a few breathing issues. So these dogs were much more compromised. There were some that were, you know, seemed okay, and for the most part, these dogs were also in pretty decent body condition. There were a couple emaciated doggos, particularly the ones that were severely matted, but quite a few of them were actually a bit chunky, so they must have had a food source. But yeah, we did send quite a few dogs to our partners at our emergency facility, VEG. They helped us out quite a lot. And the others that did require medical condition but weren't quite as urgent, we did bring back here for evaluation.
And behaviorally, as we mentioned regarding body score. So in both situations, the feeding setup was just open bag of dry, spread out, just thrown on the floor. And in a case like this with this many dogs, if you've ever seen a group of dogs eating, there's always kind of that hierarchy. And we took out some really chunky dogs that you can tell that they ran the roost, right? And then you have the really, really shut down guys. And also our severely matted dogs, it is highly uncomfortable for them to move. So even though they are hungry, they rather sit and stay than actually deal with the pain to actually go to food. And that was what we were seeing a lot of, where this one was much more difficult to know we got everyone, so we really took our time because of, they were also smaller. Personally, I'd rather deal with a larger dog. Similar to cats, they're quick, they can hide, they can kind of duck. These dogs have been there for years. This family specifically lived there for about 25 years. So these dogs had like little tunnels underneath all their obstacles. And as Tamimi had mentioned, there was object hoarding as well. So we were dealing with boxes. And when I mean boxes, I mean everything was on auto ship and they didn't open anything. So they had boxes from Chewy and Petco and Target, the whole nine. They were actively delivering things while we were there. So it was very much, and actually we got an Amazon delivery in the Shepherd case too. But just the amount of things that they had was unprecedented, honestly. And the dogs very much were used to kind of their little tunnels to get through everything. Where you saw us climbing on top, there was little highways where dogs were going through underneath, and they had like scratched and eventually bit holes through the walls, so they were able to kind of connect themselves through the rooms, because through the doors there were so much things that there were so many items that they couldn't actually go through like the door of the room. So they had like their little tunnels that we were dealing with as well.
The dogs that we brought the second day were also, would you say,
Yeah.
more like medically compromised and more behaviorally compromised? Typically that's what you would see in a hoarding case, because the animals that are maybe a little bit more social will be out and about, but the animals that are really struggling behaviorally or medical will find some sort of corner and dart around and be sort of off to the side. So that second day we brought quite a few compromised creatures to us.
Yeah, and just being in our garage, which that is our garage.
Yes.
In this photo, that is the setup that was made. And just the smell from the dogs coming off our vehicles, this was only like 10 or so dogs, was unbelievable. So I can't even imagine what the smell was in there. And this guy, you couldn't even, like, trying to see their eyes. Like, they were so mad. But then the next one would look almost pristine. So it was like a very bizarre dynamic between the conditions and like the cleanliness even of the dogs.
Yes, and it was a lot of that where behavior definitely affects it as well. There was quite a mix of breeds in there, so your longer hair, your poodle things that need active grooming. Unfortunately, people do get those dogs thinking that they don't, but they do. we had some Chihuahuas and they were like, they're short haired, they were in better shape regarding matting. Obviously they were just, dirty and definitely funky smelling. We did a lot of toweling for these dogs, very much, because it was panic. Same thing, they've never been on leashes, they've just been allowed to roam and run around in the home. Getting them to come to a leash, getting them that first day, getting all the social dogs out as much as possible, and then as we trickle through that population, now you're dealing with the dogs that are hiding. We physically had to move several items of furniture because they were underneath them, and we had to trap. So we set some traps the first night, hoping that, okay, they would come for wet food since they only ate dry. We had set up traps downstairs, and there was a second floor. And while we were setting up the traps on the second floor, within less than 5 minutes, we caught one. And it was the one dog who was like this Westie mix thing. And he ran through our legs back and forth every time as we were catching dogs. And he would look at us and then run. And he fell for the wet food in like 2 minutes. And we went downstairs and he was sitting in the trap and was like, yes. And it was the last dog we pulled Thursday night. And I had to call my team. I was like, hey, I lied to you. We got one more. I'm so sorry. Set up another crate. But the joy that we felt that we caught him, it was kind of a good way to end the night. And then we walked in the morning and we had trapped 4 dogs overnight because they came in for their wet food. So that's how we started to trickle down that population that really didn't want to come to us, that were very shut down. And still to this day, we're still working on the property, just making sure that if there are any of those really, really very timid dogs, where they're looking for movement, where they're looking for sound. The neighbors are quite friendly with us now. They're keeping an eye out, and we're going on a daily basis for several days just to confirm that everyone is out. Condition-wise, for me, this was definitely much worse because you're dealing with multiple factors. Just with the amount of items in the household, and the ammonia was 100 times worse than the apartment. The heat was the big thing. So that Thursday going in, even though we were technically out of a heat wave, it was extremely difficult for us to operate there. And it was a revolving door. Same thing, we set up a kind of a conveyor belt as we grabbed dogs, passing them along, and getting them loaded into the van, and then figuring out, oh, these dogs need to actively run to bed immediately, and assessing them within a couple minutes between each other.
Yeah. I think, again, medically, they came out in just a different array of states. So yeah, we had a couple seconds to determine where they should go. But this really was, in that kind of setup, I don't know how many of you have been in like natural disaster zones or anything like that, but I grew up in Texas, and that's pretty common to have this setup. This is a disaster situation and response, and it requires everyone to jump in, and we all very much jumped in to help.
Yeah. We accessed the house specifically on the ground level through a window because the doorways were completely blocked with about 30 feet of objects. So we had, at that point, 2 points of entry, the front door and the side window. And that's how we were collecting dogs. We had staff going through the window, collecting dogs, out the window, straight to Dr. Miranda and Dr. Greeny, check them out, and then figure out what their pathway was, either veg or ACC. And it was about an hour away, so we had, luckily, field, what we were doing, we were loading a van, had a van on standby, and had a van here, drive that van over. So that way we can really maximize our time as much as possible, but also at the same time realizing that we had to, for staff, take a break in between as we were dealing with the heat, and then also for the dogs, trying to go as slowly as possible, but also with them a little bit more urgency just with their medical. There was definitely a lot more concern of their condition.
Yeah, I think also when we remove dogs, there's so much stress that they're experiencing. They've never interacted with strangers, they've never been outside. So these dogs are coming out with, sometimes purple tongues because they can't breathe because they're so stressed. It's hot, they have laryngeal edema. This is something that we'll see sometimes in our smushy face pugs that can't breathe super well. So they're all coming out in a state of stress. So the goal is to just try to reduce their stress, remove the leash, put them in a space, and continue to keep monitoring them and see how they're doing. And thankfully, they all sort of none of them underwent like a severe respiratory episode. But we were very much keeping our eyes on that because it was still hot. And again, that stress really, really compromises them too.
And it amplifies your spicy chihuahua. So we had a lot of spicy chihuahuas that day.
Towels are your best.
We did a lot of Duro towel. And then we had some dogs that came out, and I would pass them over to the field driver, and they were like, "Oh my God, hey!" And it would just light up your day because it was like, okay, like they realize that they're going to a really good setup compared to what they've been in. The ones that are really shut down, hopefully they will figure it out that they're going to be okay. We did, unfortunately, find several dogs that had passed in the apartment. Expected, adults and puppies, but the fact that we were able to get to the dogs that were with them, I think we got them on time.
And this, in this case, 105 dogs were replaced, and the last 2 left yesterday. But the majority left in the first day and a half.
That was amazing. Yes.
A couple of our partners really stepped up, Care of DC and Posh Pets. For anyone who knows Linda Petrano, she was good on it. So obviously, I think we could talk about this case for hours and hours and hours. Is there anything closing that you want to share?
Yeah, I would say one of the big takeaways for me and for my team specifically, we saw it a lot, was just the amount of interest from the community while we were there. In the Shepherd case, the residents there, they had been living around this tent for years. And just explaining to them what we do, where the dogs are going, what is that setup, but also just seeing how grateful they were that the dogs are out. We had several that were cheering us on as we were leaving, and they were like, "We're excited, we're never going to see you again," and that's the hope. But just the amount of questions that we answered for them was quite interesting for me. Because I do think in animal welfare in general, a lot of it is lack of education. And some people just don't understand where the animal welfare and the social aspect do overlap, and you get a hoarding case like this. And the same thing for the small dogs. It's a very affluent neighborhood, and the neighbors were they knew what was happening, and they had reported it and things like that. But it was quite interesting to see where they specifically thought that this wouldn't happen in a neighborhood like theirs. And having to explain that, and I've seen it plenty of times, where it doesn't really matter. I've seen it from all ranges and all backgrounds. The amount of money that someone might have actually doesn't really affect what the animal's condition is. So it was quite interesting to talk to them and explain what does it mean for those dogs as they were coming out. And they were asking, specifically what does ACC do? And seeing their engagement and them getting excited and then jumping on social media and following us. Katie, I was pushing social media as hard as possible, telling them how important it is to adopt and foster. It was quite interesting having to walk them through those things and various questions and answers that you would think at this point most people would know. They really don't. So it was a time for us to really spread that information also.
Yeah. I think what this also emphasized for me was just the need for, I think, a greater understanding that there are things that community members can do and to be on the lookout for. You can report, continually report. That is, for the most part, how hoarding cases are uncovered. It's through neighbor calls, through Good Samaritans, people that are concerned. And then I think with hoarding cases, I always think, okay, access to services. We need to expand and grow access to spay-neuter services, access to vaccines, access to vet care, access to social services, all of these things. It's a complex issue, and it's not just one organization that can respond. It's every organization in the community that has some sort of stake or can play a role. So I think this for me was probably one of the worst hoarding cases that I've ever seen and been a part of. But I am extremely impressed how quickly we were able to move all these dogs. I think that was like mind-blowing to me. I was so confused. I was like, wait, there's like 60 dogs there now? We just brought them in. So that is because all these organizations jumped in to help.
Okay, so I think it's safe to say we hope to not ever encounter this again, but unfortunately, based on how quickly these two came together, we don't think that's true. We are immensely proud and awe of the work that was done here, and know that we will be able to handle that situation, but hopefully with more help. So, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the next slide.
Yeah, like the best slide ever.
I can talk about potato really quickly. So, that center photo on the bottom, in front of the ACC rescue vehicle, that's Gabe. He's one of our canine behavior specialists. That is Potato. It's a tiny little puppy in his hands, about 2 weeks old. Week and a half, 2 weeks, yeah. We accidentally found Potato. One of the dogs, one of the last dogs that we pulled on Friday was running in that downstairs area that you saw in the video. And one of our field guys went out. Gabe also went out. We kind of made a line with the amount of things. We weren't sure what we were stepping on. So we had to be really cautious that we didn't make it a second rescue and had to get someone out because things collapsing. And while we were grabbing the adult dog, I heard Gabe go, "Tara, I got a puppy." And we weren't expecting to find this. We had removed the puppies the day before, and there was one puppy that we had removed but didn't have a match sibling. It was a singular 2-week-old puppy, and luckily, Gabe just happened to move the right item and found this puppy. So it was for us kind of the moment of serotonin that we needed to get us through that Friday. And Potato came out, and the staff we fell for the puppy cuteness immediately. The puppy was chunky, and super chunky. Potato was very fitted. This puppy was very well fed. The mother, whoever she was taking care of this dog really well. And for me, it's the amazing thing about dogs, no matter the environment they're in, how resilient they are. So yeah, Potato came in, stayed with us for a night, we took care of him, and Potato got placed, and it's gonna have a great life. But that was the last dog that we pulled on Friday. Yeah.
I had a question regarding that case, the second hoarding case.
Sorry, this is a board meeting, it's not a meeting where we take questions from the public at this point. But we are going to move forward. I just wanted to quickly touch on the heroism that we saw in these two cases, and what it really reflects is the day-to-day dedication, professionalism, compassion that our staff has. And so I just want to, on behalf of the board, to thank everyone and tell you that we've been sort of hearing about this, but to see this reported in the detail, I think meant a lot, and it's important because it really illustrates just how trying things can be, but also just how incredible the work you all do every day, day in, day out, with often circumstances that you never could imagine. I've been sitting here having a lot of PTSD because my dog Maribel came from a hoarding situation about, I think, 14 years ago almost now. And lifelong trauma and behavioral issues. Hazmat suits, they cut a hole to get the dogs out of, there's another combination of object and animal hoarding back then. So these cases do continue to happen. And it does, I think it was also good that we focused in that there's a mental illness and there's social services, there's needs to help people here as well, to make sure, A, it doesn't happen again, but also hopefully that it never happens. So anyway, Teresa, I know we've taken a lot of time and you have a lot to report to us, but let's move forward with your report on everything that's going on in the centers.
Well, we deliberately set aside so much time for those two cases because that was really, it's such a short amount of time, we'll keep everybody on their toes, in addition to everything that's going on in the shelters that you're going to hear about now. So I cannot be more proud of this team. I always say every day they do that at the park, but this is just beyond the park. All right, so this is our new cover model for starting the board meeting, the official board meeting. This is Gigi. So last time we started the board meeting with Casper, just to point out some of the types of dogs that we have and the issue of length of stay. So Casper had been with us, I think, for over 200 days. We were just looking for someone to foster or to adopt. So Casper got adopted, which was so great. And it was just a few days after the board meeting. So perhaps somebody in this room or in that room in February, network for Casper, but that's what we're trying to do with a new cover model, Gigi, who's been in the shelter or in care for 223 days. Now she's in foster. She even knows a celebrity. She did a little Instagram thing with Naomi Watts in advance of her new movie called The Friend. She's house and crate. I mean, she's such a great dog. And she's been in care for way too long. And so if you could just, I'm not going to ask anyone to raise their hand who'd like to adopt, but just if you know anybody who has a foster, these are the dogs. We have great dogs, and that's really what's driving our day-to-day population. You'll see in a moment we have plenty of cats as well, but large dogs really stay in the shelter for way, way too long. So hopefully next time we report at a board meeting, we'll tell you Gigi was adopted. So trends, just talking about trends generally in animal welfare, the big trend is that shelters are full. That should come as no surprise to anyone, the local news, the national news, it's always being reported. These are just clips or highlights from different shelters across the country about intake being closed. We multiple times had to, we're closed for intake, but not, it really, if you need to surrender, please make an appointment. We don't keep you away. We're still working with people who need our help. Certainly, we're not going to leave a dog or a cat or anybody's pet on the street. We'll take them, but we need help. We need the public to help us. And we want to be honest with the public. It's not, at this moment in time, it's a really difficult time for you to bring your pet to our shelters. And if you can work with us, that would be the ideal. Obviously, not everyone can do that, but it's not just an ACC issue. As you can see, these are lots of organizations trying lots of things, but the intake is really the problem. And in addition, many are coming in. It's not that it's not like they're coming in droves. It's not the COVID and people don't want their pets anymore. It's just that they're staying so long, and that really is. There's less adoption going on nationwide too, and shelters that we work with are also feeling that pain point. So we may be stable with adoptions, but it's almost like a supply and demand thing. And I think that's really one of the drivers of our length of stay. So you'll hear later, Jessica's going to talk a little bit about things we're doing just to enrich the lives of the animals that are with us so that they can be good candidates for adoption. Just taking a look at intake by source. It's trending upward. Obviously 2019, when you look at this chart, was the big year right before COVID. And we see that we're moving in that direction. Surrenders are up significantly. The recent news about the rent stabilized apartments, the rent is going to go up. That's going to be a problem. That is definitely going to be a problem because we know that that is an issue for a lot of people who surrender. And it's affordability and it's housing. So, we're sort of, and this was just in the news last night, so we'll have to talk about it as a team, but I expect that owner surrender is going to continue to go up. that doesn't mean that our surrender prevention services aren't going to do as much as they possibly can, and we're going to have to push them out even further. But financial stability is certainly going to become a real challenge. I don't really have a whole lot more to say about the trends, except that, you know, this is what, on top of what you just heard, and this population, you can understand like the day-to-day of what's going on inside the shelter. Despite that, we still have a team who gets up from what they're doing today, and they race over to Mill Basin or to Forest Hills to take care of these hoarding situations. It drains a lot of resources, and so we can't thank our volunteers and our fosters and anybody who can help us, our donors who can help us just live the day-to-day, keeping these animals as healthy and safe as possible. That's what we appreciate. One other thing I would point out though is looking at cat intake now also. Again, this is data from January to May. We're just doing 6 months of operations. We are entering or really full in our cat season, so that will start to climb even further. Like you can see that it went up from last year.
Is there a trend in terms of burrow? Like how is the breakdown in terms of the surrenderings?
Yeah, we can look at that. We can look at that data, but this is, I can't tell you which borough is the highest. I think probably, I really can tell you right now. I have the data, but that obviously it's an issue. But with the shelters coming up in the Bronx, you know, we expect when we build it, we'll get more attention, but perhaps we'll get more out that way. So, you know, there's a cycle thing. I'm going to turn it over to Jessica Carroll. I have one more? In here?
Just the day-to-day.
Oh, okay. Okay. So just so you can see in care what we have as of June 28th, from last year to this year, we're up 14% in the number of dogs and 35% for cats. As I said, it's kitten and cat season, but it's just a lot more than it was last year. And now I'm going to turn over to Jessica to talk about how we're dealing with that increase, because it is quite a challenge. Thank you.
Good morning. As Lisa mentioned, I'm Jessica Carroll. I'm the Director of Placement for ACC. So I oversee our adoptions, in-shelter, mobile, our removal program, our transport program, as well as our foster care program. So when we met for the board meeting last time, Ellen had mentioned how reducing length of stay was going to be an overarching goal for ACC for 2025. And as Risa had just shown in an earlier slide, this is not a problem that is unique to ACC. This is not a problem that is unique to New York City. This is a national trend that shelters all across the country are trying to solve. And so the team of directors representing all of the major programs at ACC have been meeting on a weekly basis to brainstorm and figure out what is impacting our length of stay and to come up with some programs to try to reduce that. And I should say right off the bat, there is no magic bullet solution that if you do A, automatically all of your kennels will be empty. It really is a combination of small things working together across departments, sometimes even surprising departments that you think don't impact length of stay, to create an overall reduction. So the first thing we did was look at the animals who already have an outcome. They're adopted, they're being reunited with their owner, they're going to new home, yet they're still in the building. And sometimes they're in the building 5 days, 7 days, 14 days in really extreme cases. Why? What can we do to have them leave the moment an adopter steps forward for them to reduce that length of stay there significantly? And one of kind of the first things that popped when we were looking at this is surgery. So many of those animals were in the building waiting for a spay-neuter date, and then the longer they wait for a spay-neuter date, the more likely they are to become sick, and then the longer it takes for them to get a spay-neuter date, and it creates this cycle that just can't be broken. And so our vet services team has been working over the past few months to increase surgery capacity. That is both increasing our internal capacity for surgeries, both in physical shelters, as well as increasing the capacity that we're working with external partners. It's primarily the ASPCA, but we do have other external partners that we do surgery with. And that goes hand in hand with one of the first programs we launched, which is called Fast Track. Fast Track is based on this idea that there are animals based on their physical appearance, based on their age, based on their temperament, that are inherently more likely to get adopted and more attractive to prospective adopters. And what Fast Track does is it identifies those animals the second they put one paw in the door during their intake exam, make sure they are prioritized for vaccines, that they're getting those medical exams right away, they're getting a behavior assessment, they are getting scheduled for surgery before they even leave the medical suite, and they're being placed somewhere in the building, perhaps in our new pet adoption center in Manhattan, where people are going to engage with them as soon as they walk in the door. And if that kind of housing isn't available at that moment, making sure the adoption staff are fully aware of who they are, where they are, because these types of animals are suitable to go to just about any kind of a doctor. And we've seen Fast Track have the best success so far with our cat population, particularly our cat population in Manhattan, with kind of getting them out closer to the dates they are adopted. And that doesn't mean the other animals in the building are on a slow track. It doesn't mean they're being ignored or that we aren't doing services for them. What it does allow is for ACC to prioritize our resources. So those other animals really need important resources like volunteer bios, videos, photos, enrichment from our behavior team that a Fast Track puppy doesn't. So instead of those kinds of resources being divided across the hundreds of animals we have in care, we're really streamlining who gets what in the hope of optimizing the amount of time they can leave the building. The next thing that we are launching right now are some enhancements where our volunteer and adoption program are working together with the goal of decreasing wait times for clients who are coming in for adoption and to hopefully prevent people from leaving the shelter empty-handed. And so I know I've had this experience and feel pretty confident everybody in the room has had this experience where you walk into some sort of store or customer service experience and there's nobody available to help you. And that can happen at ACC. We have a finite amount of adoption counselors. If they're all working with clients, that next client who comes in doesn't automatically have somebody who's there. And so we're trying to fulfill that role with volunteers. And we've created 3 tiers of volunteers. The first is in a greeter capacity, making sure people feel welcomed and wanted as soon as they walk in the building. And if there isn't a staff member free to assist them, as they're walking through browsing, there will be volunteers on hand to answer basic questions about adoption, basic questions about ACC, help them fill out any adoption paperwork, keep them engaged so that they are less likely to leave. The second tier of volunteer are volunteers who participate in adoption interactions. This could be doing in-kennel interactions with rabbits, cats, guinea pigs. It can be taking an adopter and a dog for a walk so that that client can meet the dog. And what this does is it allows us to help more people at once until an adoption counselor is free to go through the rest of the adoption process with them, which should, in time, overall reduce wait times for all of the clients coming in. And the last volunteer tier is one that we've only had at our mobile events, but we're looking to bring into the shelter. And these are volunteers who are trained in all aspects of adoption counseling. So from start to finish, they can assist the staff by doing an adoption. Some of them are able to process adoptions in our system. I mean, I have had days at mobile events where I've gone as the only ACC staff member and I've been able to do 25 adoptions in 4 hours because I've had volunteers helping me going through doing the rest of those adoptions. That would not be possible without that skill set. And so we're looking to train and grow subsets of those people so that we can get through more adoptions more quickly. And this next one kind of links into it. And it's identifying and addressing barriers for interested but inactive fosters and adopters. So we host foster orientations monthly, several foster orientations. We have on-demand orientations. We have people coming in for adoption. And so these are folks who know we exist. They want an animal because they've taken whatever first steps there is towards getting an animal, yet they don't have one. Why? And I think the first question is figuring it out. Is it a barrier that we've put up that we're not aware of? Is it something that we can address? How can we get these animals from kennel to couch for people who are already interested in taking animals from us? And so this is still in its infancy stages right now, but we're going through and we're following up with all of the people who have done the foster orientations, who have submitted paperwork after the foster orientation and haven't taken an animal, and trying to just figure out why and what we can do to address that, to get animals into those homes. And we're doing the same thing with adopters who have left without animals. We're starting here in Queens with that, and then we're going to expand it to the other locations. And then last up, and this is for the future, is a new foster initiative for short-term fostering. When we moved from Brooklyn to Queens, we had 140, 150 dogs probably in the building, and we were all very stressed out trying to figure how are we going to move all of these dogs from A to B. And so we were like, let's put them in short-term foster homes, with the idea that a client picks up a dog on a Friday in Brooklyn, returns the dog to Queens on Monday. And that way the dog is chilling on a couch in the air conditioning and not being super stressed out, being ferried from shelter to shelter. And with these short-term fosters, with any large foster push, you always expect a boomerang, where the dogs come right back to the shelter. Despite the training we do, despite how prepared somebody thinks they are, sometimes there's a living, breathing dog in their house and it's barking and it's too much, and the dog comes back to ACC. And we're prepared for that. What we didn't expect is for how many dogs never came back. It was about 50% of the dogs that had gone into short-term fosters that did not come back on Monday and wound up never coming back. And it was a combination of the person fostering decided to adopt, they had a friend or family member, somebody in their network who decided to adopt, a new Hope partner maybe had their eye on the dog in the shelter, particularly some of our level 3, level 4 dogs, saw them in a home doing really well and decided to pull. Or some of the people, you're nervous about fostering. Commitment is scary, but you have the dog, it's been 3 days, it's going well. We saw a lot where it's like, you know what, I'm just gonna keep the dog another week. And it's like, yeah, maybe another week. And then I think one of the dogs is still in foster at this point, because it just becomes a little bit longer, a little bit longer, a little bit longer. And what I like to do, and part of my role in that is, yeah, whatever works for you, just take it 1 night, take it 2 nights, let's figure it out. And it's just kind of like, my goal is to never ever see that animal again. Like, that's in the best way possible. But letting them think that that's their idea, that's not my idea. And I think when you think about short-term fostering, it's like, oh, duh, do that. That sounds really easy and really obvious. But there's so much that goes into just one animal going to foster, particularly a dog, the staff resources, the cost, and it's more than just the foster team. There's a tremendous weight that we put on our vet services team for every animal that goes into foster. And so with our own foster pool right now, I spent half my evening on the phone with Dr. Tanini with 3 different medical emergencies that came up after hours. We increased the amount of animals that go to foster, we increased those kinds of things that are happening. And then with short-term fostering, it can be a little scary because not everybody's gonna keep the animal forever. Despite best efforts, they are going to bring back because that is what they agreed to, that's what they signed up for. And we have to have a space available for them in the shelter, and I don't want them waiting for a space to be created or found or a pop-up to go in some area of the building. So it's kind of everybody really working together to try to get this off the board. Looking at our placement rate for the first half of this year, and this is for cats, 91.8%. Adoptions is the highest pathway out for cats of ACC, with New Hope shortly behind, and it's been like that, I think, for the past couple of years, where adoptions has slightly outpaced New Hope with adoption placements. Return to home, a little less than 4%, and 8.1% for medical euthanasia. Our admissions, our field services, and our community cat teams have been doing a really tremendous job talking to people who have found sick and critically injured cats in the community, or working with owners who have the same to provide them with resources. And so a lot of the cats that are coming into ACC that are sick are critically sick or injured to the point where humane euthanasia is the most appropriate outcome for them. Moving along to dogs, for the first half of this year, it was 88.5%. And this is where you see the flop, where New Hope is the majority of placements for dogs, followed by adoptions, return to homes at 17.8%. And something that always strikes me is the difference between the return to home percentage for both dogs and cats, and how the different species have just such wildly different outcomes there. Behavior euthanasia, 8.7%, medical at 2.7%. you can help. We were just talking about short-term fostering. You can foster. You can share any of our foster orientations. We have 3 coming up for kittens, for adult cats, for large dogs. We have an on-demand orientation for guinea pigs and rabbits. If somebody can't make one of the live orientations, it does not mean they can't foster. If they can foster the subset of animals that we really need help with, we can always work something out outside of this. With that said, we have found the most success for both animal and person for people who come to the live orientations versus people who do not. Another way you can help is adoption. With one of the changes we're implementing within the next couple of months is we are going to be extending our adoption hours on weeknights. Moving forward, that's kind of coming out in the pathway. And then we also have adoption programming on the weekends through our mobile events. Right now, we don't have a brick and mortar shelter in Brooklyn because that's undergoing renovation. So what we've been doing are these pop-up events once a quarter in Brooklyn, where we take as many animals as we can fit from all the different shelters, bring them to the pop-up events, and just do fast-paced adoptions for 2 days straight. The last event, we had volunteers bringing us more animals than we could fit, just so that when one was getting adopted, we could quickly swap it out with another, and volunteers walking animals over from the shelter to the lifts. And we've done so many events at this specific location, these are with my best friends, that we're getting really good at it. And each event is producing more and more adoptions each time. And we are focusing more of our adoption programming on Brooklyn since the shelter in that borough is closed. With that said, we are hoping to increase adoption events in the Bronx for the same reason, not having a brick and mortar there. So if you're aware of any businesses we can partner with in the Bronx, we're always glad to take on new locations. And then another way you can help is volunteering. So we had 350 volunteers who donate almost 15,000 hours of their time. ACC has some of the most dedicated and involved volunteers. I see at least 1 or 2 in this room right now. And selfish plug, I would love for new volunteers to come and to join that adoption program I was talking about earlier, to be able to help facilitate more adoptions, get more animals out. One of the challenges we have with doing more mobile events in the Bronx is that it's a very difficult location for our current crew to get to. And so really would love to find people who live in those communities who could be volunteers and help us facilitate additional adoption events. And so, continuing. Volunteers are essential to ACC. We had our volunteer appreciation party in April, and it was really great to meet so many of our volunteers and our foster parents. I spend so much of my time texting and calling and emailing fosters. I realize I don't even know what half of them look like. So it's so good to be able to put a face to a name and to be able to thank our volunteers for the service that they're doing. They are here alongside of us, helping out with every facet of animal sheltering and animal rescue. And with that, I am going to turn it back over to Alex. Okay.
That was awesome to hear all this great projects in the works. I'm Al Silver, Director of the Mayor's Office of Animal Welfare. Before I get into the capital projects overview, I just want to say congratulations to everyone at ACC on their 30th anniversary, and thank you for all the work that you've done and all the work that you're continuing to do and just continue to evolve. And the presentation study on the boarding were just incredible, and I think we all pay attention when there's a lot of stories sometimes that get headlines and it brings the attention in and we can the animals out faster. And they are very dramatic stories and it's incredible the work that's done, but I also just want to recognize, I think Risa mentioned, like every day there's animals coming in, and the ACC staff and volunteers are doing just incredible work every day. So even if it's not in the headlines, I just want to put that out there. We may not hear about all the cats and dogs, they're not coming in dozens, but I think from one location, but dozens are coming in and being placed, and the work is just incredible. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and thank everybody. Also, before I get into this, because Jessica was talking about adoptions, I think it's new since the last board meeting. I don't recall, maybe I had just launched it, but I do want to just plug. We put on nyc.gov/animal welfare now events that are related to animals in New York City, including ACC adoption events. So anyone can go to the events calendar on our website, see not just ACC's events, but any other rescue shelter that wants to submit adoption events or volunteer trainings, foster events, celebrations of between pets and humans. So I encourage people to check that out, spread the word about that. Anything that's posted on that calendar does get funneled into the general nyc.gov events calendar, so hopefully that will also generate more interest and more attention. Okay, so happy to share, and thanks to the health department for putting together these slides, updates on just 2 Bronx and Brooklyn shelters. It keeps getting shorter, my presentation, as we complete these, which is wonderful. The Bronx Animal Care Center. If anyone's driven by, they may have seen this, but construction is approximately 50% complete. Ongoing installation of mechanical, electrical, and plumbing piping. You can see, I guess, some of, the interior and exterior wall framing is in progress. We also have installation of stormwater detention system completed. All this to say we expect substantial completion in spring of 2026 next year, opening to the public expected summer 2026. So, these are where we are right now, estimates, but it is moving along for next year. I think I have a couple more photos. Check out. And I guess these would actually be a couple weeks ago now. So it might be even more developed. And then again, just to remind, okay.
A lot of progress.
Yeah, right, very quickly, right? It's moving along, so fingers crossed. You can see again, just to remind everybody, these are what we're aiming for, and these are the renderings of the Bronx Animal Care Center, which, to remind everybody, is, I believe, about the same size as the Queens Animal Care Center, right? So it's another one of our very, very large care centers. Moving on to Brooklyn. Construction is approximately 20% complete. We have ongoing excavation for the footings, the foundations, and the underground plumbing going on. Construction and substantial completion is also expected next year. We're saying about fall 2026, with move-in projected the following winter. And this, again, is a rendering, but I will move on to some photos. I don't know if everybody gets excited about pipe photos, but I'm going to be excited about it. This is happening. This is big stuff. It's our Brooklyn Animal Care Center is going to be wonderful. So just to, I hope that's exciting for people. See what, remember, that's going to be a shelter. And then again, that's what we're going for the renderings. That is all I have because Staten Island is open, Queens is open, the Manhattan Adoption Center is open. So I'm very happy that that's it for my presentation. But if there are any questions from the board, I'm happy to.
Any questions? Cool. No? Thank you, Alex.
Thank you so much.
I see a lot of people taking pictures of the slides, and I just want you to know that the slides are available on our website right now. So you don't need to.
Okay, now we're going to review the financial results of fiscal year 25, review our budget, and Jeff Hauser, Kiwi, and Sandra, our finance director, will present this.
No, I'm on there. The glare, you barely see that, is it on? Yeah. Great, thank you, I appreciate it. Okay, sorry about this. I'm used to batting leadoff, you have me batting ninth, we're all over the place today. Okay, so the presentation today essentially is in 3 parts. So a look backwards at the financial results for the first 11 months. Talk a bit about what's happening in the development area, which is amazing news for 25, I'm sorry. Yeah. And then an introduction to the 26 budget. So, as you heard before, our fiscal year ends June 30, and so today being July 1, it would have been optimal if this meeting was on the 21st as opposed to the 1st. We would have had our June results finalized. We're starting the June accounting close literally when I leave today. So what you're looking at is the results for 11 months ended May, with the understanding, the caveat that we have some items that are, because of normal year-end accounting procedures, will be booked in June. So some numbers are subject to change, but this is essentially where we are through May. Total net assets increased by $4.6 million. The unrestricted part of that increased by $3.1 million, which was better than budget. We have certain costs that were capitalized, and then we had some major success in the development area. We're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive in that in a couple slides from now. In terms of numbers, just so you know, for year-to-date May, the shelter revenue, the giving and event expenses, collectively the development area, came in at about just under $5 million year-to-date May, compared to about 3.7 in the budget and 3.3 in prior years. So the results there are certainly great to talk about, and again, we'll do that in a couple of slides. Any questions on where we are with net assets for the first 11 months? Next slide, please. So we usually present our statement of financial position. ACC has about $22 million of net assets recorded as of May 2025. Of that, about $8 million relates to the shelter operations themselves. About 3.1 of that is temporarily restricted for use after May. Cash on hand at the end of May was around $7.2 million. It'll be a little bit less when we close June. That isn't really a problem. That's just because of the DOH advance and recoupment mechanisms. We are still in that recoupment phase, so it'll be a little less for June, but still a positive number. We are on track on the DOH invoice and cash collections. At this point, it was only when the slide was done with April and May was outstanding. April's been taken care of, so we are right on target. I note this every meeting, and I'll note it again. ACC currently owns a portfolio of donated marketable securities. None of those securities have been sold to date. The total basis for those donated securities is about $315,000. As of May, the portfolio appreciated by just under $300,000 to get to a value of about $606. This number has bounced a bit, as you can imagine, between February and March. So actually, February was actually looking pretty good. We had a meeting in March, that number was going to be a lot less. In April, a little bit less, and May has come back in a V shape. The reason why I bring that up is not necessarily to talk about the donated securities, but as a coming attraction, we've been working with Jason Power to develop an investment strategy and a policy. And this is kind of a coming attraction. We'll talk about it later, but this whole question about what to do with donated securities, what to do with what to invest in, is something we've always needed to look at a lot closer. We're now doing a deeper dive on it. And that'll be a conversation in the near future. And then again, as a reminder, the organization does have access to a line of credit. At the moment, it hasn't needed to draw on it, but it is there, so there is ample liquidity there. Next slide. Cash summary, thank you, appreciate it. Again, as I mentioned, cash has been positive. ACC generated about $10 million from its operating activities, not including the construction project through May. Again, some of that is going to be taken back because of the recruitment process, but again, that's reasonably healthy. So this is just a continuation of the balance sheet discussion. So that's the look back, and so before we get to a deeper dive on the development function, any questions or comments? The next one. Yes, the next one. That one.
No. So I'm pitch hitting here, our development director, Ashley Basula, is in here. Travis are. And I just need to give a huge shout out to them. Ashley started less than a year ago, and this dynamic team of 3, plus we have a donor database person, just did such great work. And there's so much energy in that team that this is really a pleasure to report. So if you can see, as Jeff said, we budgeted 3.6. That budget was created before Ashley started. She came in October, and just between October and June 30th, they just blew it away. We're coming in at 5.52, which is unbelievable. That's the highest the development department has raised. And I give credit to this incredible team. Sam does individual giving, Michelle is doing institutional giving, Ashley is doing it all, plus the event. And it's the highest amount of revenue that the development department has brought in to date.
Fantastic.
I think that the ACC team makes their job a little easier because of how much work we're doing and how much community engagement we're doing and making new partnerships, and also the social services work that we're doing has really attracted a lot of new support and new foundations where we can look for giving where ordinarily when it's just about animals or shelter life, the giving was more limited. So again, I can't thank you guys enough. Just to give you some highlights on the institutional giving side, one foundation that we're really proud of is the Ellen and Georgina Bloomberg Foundation, who gave us $1 million to build out the clinic that is going to open shortly. We have just started hiring for it. We're working with them on the naming rights for that building, so that's moving forward, and hopefully late summer, early fall, we'll start to see work and certain communities start there. Another institutional thing to point out is we got a sizable grant from the Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta. This is an important one. This is an anonymous donor. However, the anonymous donor was formerly a volunteer. And so again, it goes back to relationship building and the opportunities that we have here to work with people, and you never know what impact you're going to make. So we were, although sad that we don't know who it is, we were really excited that they thought so highly of us, and it came from a family foundation. Royal Canin is our new feeding program partner, and so they were a sponsor at the gala. They were the Giving Tuesday match, and so their match of $25,000 for Giving Tuesday was the highest match we've ever had before. So that was also pushing out development more so than we've had in the past. On the individual giving side, we came in just a few dollars short of our $1 million budget. We're pretty close though, but some of the great highlights is Giving Tuesday did better than any other year before. Major donors, we attracted a lot of new major donors. We have 120 donors at the major gift level of $1,000 or more. In fiscal 25, we secured $10,000 for a naming opportunity in the Queens Animal Care Center for cat isolation, and another $25,000 for a naming opportunity of the cat neonatal unit in Queens. Monthly donors also, we have added several new monthly donors, 53 this year. We have 500 monthly donors, of which 40 are at the $100 level. That's something that we're going to build out, and I know that Sam is working on a strategy for that. Special events, the birthday party was a huge success. I will note that the ASPCA really, we talk about the ASPCA a lot, and over the years they have become such a valuable and tremendous partner, and they were a big part of that success. We also had a very vibrant host committee, which in the past hasn't been as active, and so the host committee really helped build out the success of that party. And then we're also working on the campaign for the future. one of the things I will say about that campaign and also about general giving is the value of this new real estate. The campaign really raised its money because Queens was open and people came in and they take tours and they see opportunity. We started the campaign before any of this, and construction was underway, and we were so excited, and we were showing, you know, the architect's rendition of what it's gonna look like. You know, so it's like some excitement was building, and there were some commitments in advance, but once Queens opened, and once the Pet Adoption Center opened, it really started to move. So, in the campaign for the future, we're at 1.9 million, about 2 million, the goal is 5. When the Bronx and when Brooklyn open, I feel like we're gonna make that goal. So that's our ambition, but I think it's very practical to have something to show, like come in and see this. And especially now, like we still have people who come in to look at the space and identify a bigger giving opportunity than just, you know, monthly giving or something like that. They say, I want to name this wing. And it's, so that's been so helpful, and I think that that's really gonna help the future campaign. And then city council, we can always rely on city council. Sometimes, you know, a council member either leaves or their focus changes, but we've been really successful with surrender prevention, community clinics in city council. And adoption events, we've gotten better at saying like, your community is not really the best place for adoption, our adoption vehicle, but how can we help? We have a food pantry, maybe you want to do that. So I feel like we're much more developing, much more clear about what our needs are, and also clear about what our donors' needs are, and if they don't align, we'll move on. So that is all I have for.
Bruce, can I just ask a question about
Yeah.
the city council? I'm just a bit confused by the committed line versus the revenue line. And specifically about fiscal year 25.
So I can answer that.
Did we have no revenue from
Yeah, I can answer
discretion?
that question.
Okay, thank you.
So the 60,000 you see as committed was the amount, so I think here, thank you. So the 68,500 is the committed amount for fiscal 25. And for fiscal 26, when we did this report, it was $60,000. That's what we projected, but actually I saw a schedule C yesterday, last night, and it's 60,500. So it's committed, excuse me, because we don't voucher to city council until the end of the fiscal year. We receive the funds the following year.
Oh, I
So
see.
we receive
Okay.
the
This is one of those where I was saying before, in a couple of weeks, this would have been a little bit more
Right.
complete. So
Got
it's
it.
kind of a coming traction, but that will be eventually in that
Okay.
fiscal 25 column.
Okay, so it's gonna show up as revenue in 26, but committed in 25?
It'll show up actually as 25 once it's invoiced.
Oh, I see. Okay, got it.
And we can move into the budget now. Okay. Should I bring your laptop? And households, what is the? Good morning, still. I'm Sandra Arena, the Director of Finance, and this is our fiscal 26 operational budget. As you know, or not, ACC's budget is comprised of DOH and non-DOH funding. Excuse me. DOH for fiscal 26 approved a budget of $37 million. 32.5 is for operational expenses and 4.5 is for mortgage payments for our Queens location. This is an increase of $3.1 million over fiscal 25. For the non-DOH sources, we have City Council, which we just mentioned, awarded $6,500 for fiscal 26. We have shelter income that is projected at $650,000, and that's based on the revenue that we received this prior fiscal year. Fundraising revenue is projected at $5.3 million, and that includes institutional giving, individual requests, and event revenue, which Lisa went over a few minutes ago. Moving along to expenses, and I apologize, I'm looking at the screen at that one. Moving along to expenses, the most significant increase this fiscal year is on personnel services, which is a result of an increase in headcount, rise in fringe costs, which includes health benefits, and also uphold the adjustment that will come effective July 1st this fiscal year. As you may recall, the city issued a 3% cost of living increase adjustment for nonprofit human services. So thank you to DOH for including ACC in that increase. Other notable variances we have in expenses are facilities. You'll see a decrease of 18% for fiscal 25, from fiscal 25. And the fiscal 26 amount you see in the budget is more closely aligned with what we spend in fiscal 25. General insurance is the one category that unavoidably increases every year by hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the increase in that category is 23%. And similar with vehicle expenses, there's an increase of 11%, and this is directly related to the vehicle insurance cost. The next significant variance is contracted services, and this is mainly due to the security guard services that we've added to our shelters. And it's also including increased in per diem vet services costs, which goes along with what Dr. Tumino mentioned about needing more per diems and medical services to help with the state effort. Rent and utilities shows a decrease of 17%, reflecting the utility bills now that the construction is practically over for Queens. And the last variance, you see significant variances on the other OCCS, which was an increase of 53%. And within this category, we have mostly non-shelter expenses, which are development expenses, admin expenses, such as bank charges, depreciation, and other development like appeals and direct mailing liquidations. To summarize and conclude, our fiscal 26 overall budget is $43.1 million, combining both DOH and non-DOH sources. $37 million from DOH, $770,000 from Shelter and Implement City Council, and $5.3 million from fundraising revenue. And this is a total increase of 13% from fiscal year 25.
Could you just give us more detail on the other OCPS line, please?
Yes, so the biggest increase here is depreciation of equipment. So it went from about 150,000 to
As we buy equipment for this facility, now we have to start depreciating it, so that's one of the drivers.
Got it. Okay.
But then also things
It's the
like bank
major
charges and
driver.
other things that are just volume-based included.
Okay.
and bank charges increased a lot because of the 1906 transactions we had. Any other questions?
Recently, I had a brief conversation about event revenue. We just need to fill that space in,
Correct.
working with the development committee,
Correct.
in terms of what we'll be doing.
Yes, so it won't be zero, but it's really hard to like just throw a dart at it.
One event, two events, multiple, yeah.
Cultivation, we really want to focus on cultivation,
Right.
and talk about the success of the past event that we had and really have an informed approach with the development.
And on the request line of 500,000, is that, do we have a, what's the, is that a placeholder?
Yeah, it's a placeholder, but we're fairly confident that we're going to see a couple of estates. Ashley has been working with a couple of attorneys who have reached out to us, and so that's
Okay.
like but we think it'll be sizable, so we felt like
Okay.
500 might be the right,
Okay.
the right amount.
Okay. I mean, that also could be the one for event revenue, if for some reason, you know, so I know
Yeah.
it's hard on July 1st to know exactly where we're going to be.
Exactly.
Just to clarify, on the request of these people who asked, we've been notified that we're in the estate, and it's just a matter of selling all the.
Yeah, and you don't know-
prices and allocated things.
Correct, we don't
Yeah.
always know how much,
Yeah.
but just from the inquiries from the estate attorneys, we put together this best estimate.
Okay.
And the legacy giving is a program that we've talked about for a long time. And
Yeah.
Ashley's really focused on building that out this year too. And we have a couple of technology programs that we're gonna purchase this year that are gonna help us with that.
With the request, is the revenue, if we already have a reasonable idea that we're going to receive it, do we not, recognize it, an estimate of it, currently, like at the time that we expect to receive it, as opposed to when we actually receive? That would be more of a Jeff question.
We recognize it
Can
when
you
we
repeat the question? I'm not
receive
sure
it.
I get that. I'm sorry.
Should we be recognizing the request when we've been notified we're going to receive it and we are reasonably certain we're going to receive it, as opposed to when it actually lands in our account?
It's a good question. Probably, if you're absolutely positive you're gonna get 100% of it, you can probably, on the date that you get notified, is probably okay to report it at that point. If you're 100% sure that there's no issue with probate or anything else like that, if you're 100% sure.
Okay.
The really conservative way would be to say, no, we're not really gonna count on probate until we get paid. I can make the argument either way, but probably the first way would probably say.
We wouldn't record it as a receivable until we have the actual document signed.
Got it.
Document signed, that's different when you make it a deed. Yeah.
Maybe a naive question, on the insurance, is that like insurance on the real estate, the vehicles, general? What's the biggest driver of the insurance?
Well, the standalone insurance line is general liability, pet insurance, directors and officers.
As you know, the whole industry is getting killed. It's
Yeah.
absolutely been getting killed. So every policy, doesn't matter what the coverage is, everything is going up 25% all across. Just like insurance.
Including health. Okay, that concludes the presentation. Oh, yes.
Yes, so knowing that we have some refinements to go on this, but we do have an active budget that we're moving forward into the year with. So I'd like the motion to approve the FY '26 budget in a second. All in favor of approval? Budget is approved. So that concludes our financial portion. We'll move to the public comments session. Again, just to revisit the key points. The board is always pleased to hear and wants to hear from the public. And we on the board and the team from ACC will try to address questions as well in terms of answers. Some of the questions might be so specific or about matters we don't have immediate answers to, so we'll follow up with you. That's why it's important to have email addresses, phone numbers, follow up. So thank you all for filling that out. And again, reminding everyone we have who is our timekeeper? Timekeeper, official timekeeper here. So 2 minutes per person, and again, you do have to stop when the 2 minutes ends in order to allow everyone to have the same amount of time and time to speak to us. And again, just to remind everyone of the civility governance for this session, and any disruption will just end the public session, the public comment session. This is an option, this is something the board wants, and we have made it a key part of our meetings, it's important to us, but if a member of the public makes it so we can't continue and have this, we'll have to end the session. So just want to be real clear about that. And I'm going to go from reverse order of signing up. So I'll start with Lynn Pacifico. Lynn, are you
Hi.
there? Hi.
I have to say, it's been a wonderful presentation, and I'm dumbfounded, and I want to be all your friends. But, I come from another end of this, and last year I adopted a dog here, and this is what I discovered. discovered it was just this one pup. She was locked in a crate most of the day. I believe she had a UTI when I got her. It was high smelling, huge amounts of urine, numerous times a day, and I think it was from being confined in a small area for a long period of time. It took months to house train her, because she was confined so long in such a small space. And she went in her bed while she was in her bed. She went next to and in her water and food bowls. And she had prey trauma. She got overexcited and jumped up and ripped clothing when anyone paid her any attention. She was craving attention. And she was acting out, not because she was bad, but because she needed to get her puppy energy out. And she was failed here. Actions could have been taken to help her, but instead she was drugged. She was put on 3 different behavior medicines. And it's an example of how things could be done better and how she was failed and how my tax dollars are being misspent. So there needs to be a review of your treatments of the dogs that come through here, especially the puppies. To begin with, let them play to exhaustion twice a day. It's very simple. Train them to walk on a leash and curb train them. I watched, while I was waiting to meet her, I watched the dog walkers outside. Okay.
2 minutes, thank you. Do you have any?
That was the time?
Yeah,
Yes, I was in time.
okay. Jones, Sulaco.
But it's new.
Wait, so.
I was like seventh on the list. It should be.
You want to make
Oh, I'm gonna talk fast.
I was wondering if you
sorry.
wanted to.
Oh, yeah,
That's why I
yes,
referred to you.
sorry.
John, just a second.
Oh,
Joe, sorry, wait a moment.
I can respond, just, I don't know the individual case of your dog, and first I want to say thank you for taking so much time to help rehabilitate her. When we get dogs that come in, we often have no idea what their histories are. We don't know why they act the way they do, but we have a lot of extremely high energy animals with very high behavioral and medical needs. And each animal that does come in is assessed individually, and we do the very best we can to meet those needs. And it's complex and it's difficult, especially when we have a very high population of animals. And we also really need people like you to foster, to adopt, to be a part of the solution. And it sounds like you have been, so I wanted to thank you for that.
This was Rob, I don't know if you remember. And I did take the online class to foster here, but somehow you lost my, and so I would have to take it again, and I haven't taken it yet.
Thank you for adopting. Joan?
all right.
Sulaco.
My favorite paper, I always write letters. The article says that people in the neighborhood complained, 311 called for years. Police responded, they get shut out of the door, and that was it. I'm wondering, that sounds too easy. Why wasn't the Department of Health involved? Why didn't somebody take another step? Because I'm sure if Peter knew about this would have been ended a long time ago. Department of Health, aren't they supposed to do something about that? It's health between people and animals. It was just, I don't understand that, and that's an affluent area. But maybe the Department of Health could answer that. My suggestion next year, since we have a meeting twice a year, let's have a representative from some councilman's office, senator, assemblyman, because this year, 20 bills passed the Senate. But when it goes to the Assembly, they all fail, because Lou Pardo, who's in charge of the Ag Committee, just failed. Not one bill, not even Peanut the squirrel got any justice. Not one animal-related bill passed this year. That's terrible. I know maybe that's not the involvement here, but we have to get a little bit of legislation involved here, because that's just shameful. We have nothing to show for it this year, you know? And about this, this is very, very upsetting, very disturbing. People complain for years, they do their due diligence, police go to the door, oh, because the woman says whatever, then that's it? You just leave it like that? Something's missing, somebody dropped the ball. I think the Department of Health should have gotten, somebody should have got the Department of Health involved, because you're talking about the health between people and animals. They had dead animals in it, there could have been a dead person, well, now there is, but the thing is, all those years, I mean, I know my neighborhood, I'm living there 65 years, if that stuff was going on, I feel bad for those people that live there, and I can't believe that's $1 million home. You know, thank you.
Thank you, Joan. The next speaker, I actually can't, I'm sorry, I can't make out the writing. 201 Barrack Street is your address?
Delmar,
What is your name
Delmar.
and your last name?
Delmar Leon,
Delmar Leo. Okay.
Canine Rescue NYC. So, a couple notes. With this hoarding case, you have had the assistance of the New Hope partners. Some rescues have closed for intakes. Fosters are hard to come by. Are there going to be any changes made to the timeline of at-risk youth commanded dogs? When looking at the names of the rescues that have pulled, only a handful are pulling from the youth commands. Not enough networkers pushing your animals. Those that are posting are not consistent in posting. A dog is not enough to posting is not enough to push an animal to be seen. Besides followers, you need engagement. You need to have active. You need to be pushing the animal actively in order for that animal to be seen. Enough followers is not even enough for an animal to be seen, given all the noise that's in the metaverse. Open communication between your New Hope partners, coordinators and networkers. They only speak to rescues, and sometimes networkers need to have information so that they can push those animals fast enough, especially the youth commanded, which is the ones that are only network. How are you assessing if New Hope partners are tapped out and dogs are being killed because there is not enough rescue pooling? Social media, who is the link, we need a social media person who is the link to the networkers and can pass on information live, and the at-risk outcome list is not updated sometimes after 3 days and wasting our resources. You do not have enough networkers pushing those dogs. Those dogs are getting killed unnecessarily. And I've actually emailed your director, not received any responses. I've actually brought in fosters for those animals to be pulled, not received any responses, and the fosters are not even being called back. I've actually adopted 2 of those dogs, and there are 35 that have been only adopted, and there's been 200 animals killed. What can we say about this?
Yeah, I mean, so I can start. So with fosters for our at-risk animals, we do put the animals up on our at-risk list. Sometimes they are up for 3 days, sometimes they are up for 2 weeks. The time to work on placement for them is when they're up. It is not once they've come down. And with fosters who are interested in fostering, we do have our pre-screener form where everybody is contacted. And so as you know, we've communicated with you in the past to direct you to have people fill out that form. We can't respond, unfortunately, we don't have the bandwidth to individual networkers who want to talk to us about each of the individual dogs, but we are certainly happy to talk to anybody who can reliably foster or adopt a dog. And I mean that reliably. Having somebody who cannot foster but pretends they can foster to the point where we transport a dog 3 hours away and nobody shows up, that's not helpful.
I just wanted to add to what you just said. So in terms of calling back for fosters,
Your 2 minutes is up, and so
well, I
this
just wanted to
isn't a back
reply
and forth.
to. I just wanted to reply to what she said because it's important.
Sorry.
Okay.
Anything further, team, on that? No? Candace Kumar?
I work with, excuse me. Thank you, first of all, for all that you do. I volunteer with Little Wanderers NYC, but by day I'm actually a reporter and writer in the local media circuit in New York. And Katie Hansen has been phenomenal I have reached out to her numerous times, and we do post together for cats and dogs in need. So sometimes it just takes this gentle approach to say, like, I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna spend my day with you, and we did, and we met the counselors, and we shared cats and dogs. And I wanted to say thank you to all of you for all that you do. My main question for all of you is, Little Wanderers in the Bronx receives between 50 to 70 DMs a day. And there was recently a cat that was dying from cancer that had erupted on the cat's face, and it was covered in maggots and flies for God knows how long. And they took the cat yesterday or the day before to AMC, and they put her to sleep. But the community in the Bronx needs a little bit more education on what to do when they see dying cats or dogs that are tied up and need help. So Little Wanderers is asking, we're asking if there's a contact we can have besides the community cat's email where they can kind of get emergency response into a cat like, they called her simply Sarah, who just passed away with a miserable death on the side of the street. Thank you.
So, yeah, I'll touch base with you.
That would be great,
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, because we do get a number of calls for outside cats in particular that are in the direction. And we've had conversations recently just to make sure we're streamlining that. And, hopefully someone can bring the cat quickly to us, but we have also sent out our field staff. And sometimes they can't find the cat, because cats may be moved. So it's complicated, but we always want to make sure that we end the suffering for the animal who's in that, like, the condition you're describing.
Thank you, I'll give you.
Yeah, definitely.
Esther Costa.
Sure.
Thank you. Are we being videotaped? Videotaped?
It's in the back corner.
Ah, okay. I'll turn away. I think my first question might be for Helen and Jessica. Well, congratulations on extending the adoption hours to evening hours. I mean, that's great. On adoptions, is there a higher rate of return on your adoptions than that had been previously? And what do you think the rate is?
The return rate is a little less than 5%.
Really? Okay.
It's not higher than it has been in the past, but even if it was, I challenge you and everybody in this room, what is the difference between a short-term foster and a dog going to an adopter's home for a couple of days? Intention? Really no difference. It's in a home, it's on a couch, it's out of the shelter. We're hopefully getting photos, videos, information to make a better match for that animal moving forward.
And I mean, the reasons for return are all over the place. And some of them make no sense. I mean, someone's life circumstances change so substantially, like in a day, it doesn't make sense. Maybe they don't want to admit that it isn't a good fit, but it could be allergies, it could be not interacting with other pet. We do our best to try to counsel of how to do introductions, but people don't always listen, they get too excited, they want to introduce them. There's just so many different reasons, but I think what Jessica says is very true. Like, we get just that much more information about the animal.
Then my second question is for Risa. All right, we saw the budget for 26, and there's an increase in DOH budget by about 7 million. How much has the DOH increased the operational funding between last year, just to fund your operations? I'm not talking about the construction costs or anything like that. Has it increased?
I can answer that question. In fiscal 26, fiscal 25, we received $29 million for operations, and fiscal 26, we have 32.5.
No, for the,
It's a $3 million increase. Fiscal 25 was 29 million.
no, I'm not talking about the whole thing, because I'm talking about.
Just shelter ops.
Yeah, shelter ops.
Do you have a line?
I do not have the number here, but I.
And I was just going to ask if you had negotiated with the DOH court, so that the DOH would pay you now for your outreach activities, because you said at the September city council meeting that it wasn't in the contract. Have you renegotiated so that the DOH will pay you for outreach?
We haven't renegotiated our contract, it's the same scope of services. We do a lot of fundraising for community
Yeah,
outreach
yeah.
and survey prevention, as you know, that was, we started those services with the new contract, so as a separate from the new contract. But, you know, the budget process, we talk to DOH all the time, we like basically say, here's what we need, they come back and forth. It's not an easy process, and there's not a lot of extra money running around. So we're grateful. Let me just say, you saw all the heroics and what the staff do. We're very grateful for that 3% increase. It is much easier to raise money for general operations and specific programs than it is to say we need money to pay our staff. So much of that money goes to personnel. It's a percentage that goes to operations is much lower when you break it out. We need to pay our people, we need to pay them more. We're really happy that we pushed our minimum wage for our lowest paid workers above what the city minimum wage is. The city gave us a wage enhancement adjustment to make that jump. So on the personnel side, that's where most of the money is going. On the ops side, we know we can fundraise, and I hope we'll do even better in fundraising, but that's why you see it as much lower.
Thank you, Esther. Joan Pawlowski. Hi, Joan.
I agree also that the outcome page needs to be updated in a timely fashion. There was one dog, he was killed on 6/15. His page, his outcome has been updated to 6/22. That's not acceptable. Also, the at-risk dogs really need to be shared on social media. What we have is like volunteer pages that share these dogs. We need to bring back that at-risk page. That's how I first got involved with these dogs. That's how I found my dog. And it really does help for you to actually put out the at-risk dogs on your own site. I also think there should be a dedicated phone line that we can call up, that if it's a real dire emergency, that a dog is given a command and he's about to be put down, we need to be able to reach him in a timely fashion and not send an email and wait for a response. Also, the dogs, once they get the commands, they're removed from the website, so the public can't find them if they're searching for them. They think they're gone already, when they're in actuality can still be saved. And also, you need to find a way to actually find out what happens to dogs that are not on the outcomes page. Because I search for dogs. I search for dogs that's been adopted, that have been placed for rescue, euthanized, and the only thing that I see is no results found. So if I can't find a dog in your system, what good is that? It should say placed with rescue, or adopted, or euthanized if that's what happened to them. It shouldn't be no results found. And that happens time and time again. And also, the other question I have, this dog, Cookie Monster Grizzly, he was reclaimed on 2/16, and then, Grizzly, I'm sorry, and then Cookie Monster. And then he was reclaimed on 2/16, then he was brought back as a stray and euthanized on 6/5 with the name Grizzly. And he had 2 different numbers. So in the outcomes page, it still says reclaimed, but it also says euthanized, and there's 2 different numbers. So I think that happens often too, that dogs get different numbers when they're brought back. That's very confusing, and how does that figure into your statistics? Is the dog reclaimed, or is it euthanized?
Thank you. Anyone have?
I just want to say something about social media and strategy. You know, we talk every board meeting about how many animals we have here in care and how many animals are available for adoption. That's how we want to use social media, because there's a world out there of people who want to feel good about adopting. I so greatly appreciate all of the interest in the community that focuses on our dogs and cats that are at risk. However, that's a much smaller community than the number of animals we have right now. You can get up and adopt anyone you want, but they're not flying off the shelves. These are the dogs, I'm going to talk mostly about dogs because that seems to be where you're focused. These are the ones that may become at risk for being in the kennel for too long, for not being socialized, for being among too many animals causing stress. We want, there's 8 million people in New York City. There's not 8 million people who want to adopt, and there's certainly not 8 million people who want to take a dog that's at risk for either behavior or some medical issue that requires a lot of extra time and a lot of extra money.
A lot of publicly adopted dogs
Sorry,
are
your
at
2
risk
minutes is
too.
up.
Our
Sorry, this is
focus
not a.
in social media
dialogue.
is to promote the best candidates for adoption. We have so much available, and for foster. And I do appreciate the at-risk community, and I appreciate what the staff does to make those really, really difficult decisions. And it just, you know, you have to give us a little bit of room here to try and deal with the entire population. And that's a subset, and it's a small subset, a subset that we don't want to have, but that's how social media is used. There are other, whatever other issues that you have with how it works and all of that, I would defer to the people who actually are making a list and how our process works. So you can talk to them about very specific cases, but overall, let's get the ones that are really great, who want to be in your homes, out of the
I
shelter.
didn't use my 2 minutes, and I would like to take back
Bill
the
Zachary.
response. I'm sorry?
Bill Zachary, you don't have 2 minutes. Bill, you're up.
Sir, I didn't use my 2 minutes.
I will have
and
to,
wanted
I
respond to what
will, you
she
did
just
use
said.
your 2 minutes.
No, I did
You-
not.
Okay, so now we're gonna have to end our public session. Are you gonna stop, or are you gonna,
What is it?
Bill, you're up.
Thank you, and I'd just like to comment on the decreasing the length of stay presentation. I think that was really excellent. And Esther and I were talking, coming over, we were just so pleased to see that there's some attention being paid to try to have the hours that ACC has available to people for adoption kind of coincide with their schedules. Not everybody is available 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, holidays exempted, you know? And I think that's terrific and shows some worth a lot, so thank you. And my question, Patrick, really is for you. It's great you're down, you're still down 2, but you did fill 1 position.
I just wanna jump, sorry, you can finish this, I don't want your time to keep going.
That's okay, it's gonna be quick.
I'll get there.
But my other question was to you is, in the the independent director position that's open, what qualities do you look for to fill that spot?
Yeah. First of all, just because I believe your organization was concerned we didn't have a police appointee, but the police always will have an appointee in place serving us, and there's just been some time for the police to make that appointment. And I forgot at the beginning of the meeting, I haven't had a chance to meet him yet, but the new police appointee is named Sergeant Timothy Cicchini, and he wasn't able to make this morning's meeting, but he is now appointed and on the board. But, you know, honestly, Bill, the qualities that we're looking for, because we advise the mayoral office as well, and candidates, we're looking for people who believe in our mission, who are interested in service, who have a skill set. We keep track of this, you know, the skills that we have on the board, and we identify areas that we feel we need representation, extra help on, and so that's how the committee works. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. The last speaker today is Deborah Kalish.
Hi, thanks. I'm a map volunteer. I know a number of you, and I want to. I think Alex, at your presentation, needs a few more line items. So I'm going to ask about whether there are any plans on the board to demolish and rebuild the main building in Manhattan. We love PAC, it's great. However, the building is a chronically sick building. The logistics are terrible. You cannot, there's no isolation, animals get sick all the time. It's tough for staff and for volunteers. So that's question number one. Are there plans in the works or are on the board to redo Manhattan? The second question has to do with some of the conditions of the animals that are coming in. Just personally, I've seen so many animals that have come in that are emaciated. And I know many are stray, but some are surrendered by people, and we know who those people are. So I'm curious as to, does ACC track those people? Is there some, I know that sometimes, or that often you report neglect and things like that, but are those people followed? Do they show up on a do not adopt ever, list? How does that actually work? It seems like more of that is happening these days, but maybe it's just what I'm seeing. Thank you.
Oh, okay, sure. So on Manhattan, I think, the current projects were part of a big push several years ago, and we're seeing them come to fruition, which is great, and I think it is showing how wonderful and what a difference it makes. So
Sure.
I think it was a little bit short possibly, but it is, I don't have the number total in front of me, tens of millions of dollars into the capital project.
Probably, 40 million to build something new, I would think, but.
But I will speak with some other folks, nothing firm enough for me to put on a slide at this point or anything,
But I'll tell you as the chair of the board, and I know that I speak on behalf of every board member here, any chance we get to talk about that need to anyone who might potentially help fund that kind of capital improvement, we do. And, I've been talking to mayoral candidates about that when I have a chance to talk. But we had $100 million overall that was earmarked to the Bronx, to Queens, to the adoption center, and to the Brooklyn rebuild.
Sure.
And glaringly, there was no funding for the Manhattan building, and we're all deeply concerned about that, for sure. Yes.
Deborah, answer your second question. I've had the pleasure of being in the hallway of Manhattan a couple of times.
Yes.
But I oversee the medical operations and the field operations, who has a hand in both the cruelty thing. I agree with you. I do believe we've seen an increase in what we would put cruelty, neglect, the animals that we're seeing. As veterinary professionals, we do have the obligation to report that, and we do. So we have a pretty objective process in how we do that. That is based on the notes that we capture at admissions, whether there is an owner involved or not, or as a stray. And then after the medical exam, we put together our findings in a purely objective format that then we forward to NYPD's Animal Cruelty Investigation Squad. I can't speak for Sergeant Chikini, who's not here, about what he does on his end at NYPD, but we have a direct line with the cruelty squad at NYPD. And based on what we provide to them, they have to make that judgment call about, do they have enough to sort of continue that as a case and push that through to the prosecutor's office or not. There are some that I think us and NYPD both agree should be prosecuted further, but there's components that they know from their work that they just can't proceed with, but they do put that on the radar. So there's been some cases where they get picked up and they were following along, but they just didn't have enough from a legal angle to pursue that further. And, again, I'll leave that to him when he's here next time to talk about that. But I would say, statistically speaking, 50% of the cases that we report and are not taken, you can argue are access to vet care issues, and we hope to be part of that solution with that clinic that we're opening here at the end of the summer, and also with the Bronx as well, because a lot of those are often financial reasons that people are choosing between food in their mouths and food in the animals. And unfortunately, they have to make that decision. That's why we don't judge when they come into us as an owner surrender, because they didn't make the most selfless decision in that moment. But we hope to be able to prevent that and leave them in loving homes with the goal of that clinic.
Thanks.
I think that's it. Thank you. Thank you all. I think now we need to have a thank you. And also, the board will be meeting in executive session to review matters that we need to look at as a group, exclusively as the board. So we'll need to clear this room immediately, so thank you all for coming. But also thank you for also helping us clear the room so we can get back to our jobs and have lunch.